Part 21. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 204. The reason why the distractions in the prehistoric world have become much thinner is not because Xuanhuan intercepted most of them. Xuanhuan did not intercept the spiritual will and thought fragments that tended to the prehistoric myths and legends. Therefore, the distractions that flowed into the prehistoric world not only did not become scarce, but because of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, they have spread all over the blue planet. In addition, the people of Shenzhou practiced the exercises that were inherited from the prehistoric world. Nowadays, only when the people of Shenzhou practiced in large numbers, they also promoted the prehistoric world in disguise. The whole world knows about the prehistoric world and all kinds of myths and legends about the prehistoric world. Therefore, the distractions that flowed into the prehistoric world have become more vast and magnificent. It is just because the world has been transformed again and again, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has been strengthened again and again, which has been able to wipe out more and more distractions. Naturally, the distractions that fell into the prehistoric world have been greatly reduced. Even, there is no need for the prehistoric world to reach the strength of the real world. As long as it can evolve a few more times, it will be enough to completely wipe out these distractions and turn them into pure spiritual power. And these distractions from the hearts of all living beings are completely wiped out by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and transformed into pure spiritual power. Either they are completely integrated with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to produce new spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Or they are also integrated with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and evolved into a new power, which is biased towards the power of humanity that is the collection of the beliefs of all living beings. And when a large amount of human power gathers, it will naturally be born, which is equivalent to the human will of the collection of the beliefs of all living beings, and become the humanity of Blue Star. However, because the human power of the prehistoric world has begun to spread in the Blue Star world, at that time, the humanity derived from the gathering of a large amount of human power may no longer be the simple humanity of the Blue Star world, but an extension of the humanity of the prehistoric world. Looking at the ball of light in his hand, Xuanhuan's mind moved, and he divided it again, dividing it into several balls of light of different sizes, which were suspended in front of him and fluctuated slightly, as if something was gestating inside. After thinking about it, Xuanhuan reached into the prehistoric land again, grabbed a little true spirit from the depths of the prehistoric land, and threw it directly into a larger ball of light. Then, Xuanhuan waved his sleeves lightly, and threw the several balls of light in front of him directly into the depths of the boundless chaos, and sank into several groups of chaotic air. At the same time, he thought in his heart that there was a trace of authority falling from those chaotic air groups, which merged into those balls of light respectively, so that they would not be instantly wiped out by the power of chaos. After all, these illusory fragments of thoughts have no basis for existence in the real chaos today. Without the authority given by Xuanhuan, they would only be completely wiped out in this chaos. After the colorful light balls sank into the chaotic air, a revolutionary change occurred immediately. Countless chaotic air surged and poured into the light balls, causing the miscellaneous thoughts in them to begin to merge and evolve with each other, gradually turning into large chaotic eggs. At the same time, the combination of the majestic miscellaneous thoughts and the power of chaos gave birth to a hazy will, which contained some information fragments contained in these miscellaneous thoughts. And in the entanglement and fusion of each other, it began to slowly evolve itself, and finally formed the hazy will of that chaos. And this hazy will can be called the great way of that chaotic world. Because this great way covering the entire chaos contains the information in those miscellaneous thoughts, it will naturally evolve accordingly in the chaos. The various characters and gods in those miscellaneous thoughts, as well as the life trajectories of these gods and characters, will inevitably reappear in the corresponding chaos. Of course, because the information fragments contained in those miscellaneous thoughts are definitely not so complete and perfect. This also leads to the fact that their birth and development will not be completely consistent with myths and historical legends. However, the general experience will certainly be similar. Moreover, because the current chaotic world has already produced a certain connection and resonance with reality, then in the real world, some of their thoughts and spiritual will fragments will inevitably descend into this chaotic world through the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and merge with them. This will make them more perfect and constantly leap towards reality. Well, these mythological figures and historical figures will also be illusory at the beginning of their birth. However, because the current chaotic world has achieved the real reason, therefore, the difficulty and speed of their achievement of reality will inevitably be much easier and faster. And the life trajectories of these mythological figures and historical figures will be integrated into the avenues of chaos and become a general trend of chaos, pushing the world to develop and evolve in the predetermined direction. And finally, corresponding gods will evolve in these chaos. Like the Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Indian mythology, Egyptian mythology, and the most important Hebrew mythology, etc., all of them will evolve into corresponding pantheons in this chaos. And the first to evolve is the legend of Hebrew mythology. After all, Yuan Meng invested a little bit of real spirit into it. Sure enough, just when Yuan Meng was thinking about it, he deliberately accelerated time, making the time flow rate billions of times faster than the chaos of the void. The giant egg, which was already chaotic but exuding holy light, began to vibrate slightly, and the holy light became even brighter. Finally, boom! The giant egg of chaos finally exploded completely, and a figure with bright holy light slowly walked out of the giant egg. After taking a look at the surrounding chaos and the splashing giant egg shells, the figure waved slightly. And the giant egg shells that originally shot out were suddenly controlled by the figure and began to fall back one after another, and turned into a white robe around them, which was gently draped over them. Body. Looking at the misty chaos around him, the figure was slightly in a trance, as if he was remembering some past events. Haoshan. You didn't expect that I would have such an opportunity. I will find you, knock you down from the throne, and your true spirit will be trapped in the place of eternal sleep. I am the only God. That's right, the figure in front of you is the Holy Lord of Light, the sole ruler of the world, the Holy Light God, who was killed by the Haoshan God just after he was born in the prehistoric world. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 205. Originally, the true Spirit of God would be reborn in the prehistoric world again through the rotation of the earth after the catastrophe of the prehistoric world. After all, there is no other world in the chaos outside the prehistoric world, so there is naturally no place for reincarnation. However, because the spiritual energy of heaven and earth began to spread all over the world, endless distractions began to flow into the prehistoric world. Among them, there are all kinds of myths and legends of Blue Star. Inevitably, among these various myths and legends, those that are the same and in the same system will instinctively attract each other and gather to form new god systems. Since the infinite beliefs of sentient beings will form various mythological god systems and gods in the prehistoric world again when many powerful people in the prehistoric world cannot completely intercept them. Then, Yuan Meng simply gathered and separated them, and put them into different chaotic air masses, allowing them to evolve themselves and form different god systems. Therefore, the true Spirit of God was also taken out from the prehistoric world by Yuan Meng and thrown into the light ball about the Holy Light God, and finally born again in this chaos. However, as an innate sacred true spirit, when the mark of it is not erased by people, it can naturally still remember the memory of the previous life and how it died. Well, this also laid a foreshadowing for the later confrontation between the Lord Haoshan of the prehistoric world and the Holy Light God in this vast chaos. After the birth of God, he strolled in the misty chaos, his mind merged into the chaos, and began to comprehend the great way in the chaos. That is, in this chaos, there is a hazy wool that contains the future trajectory and future trend of this chaos. Gradually, all kinds of enlightenment began to arise in his heart, and he stretched out his hand and turned it, and pieces of giant eggshells emerged. As the mind of God turned, the surrounding chaotic power swarmed in and sank into the pieces of giant eggshells. Then, the pieces of broken shells of the giant egg began to turn into pieces of sacred and holy paper. Finally, these papers were put together and turned into a book that exuded the power of holy light, with 4 shining characters on it, Bible of Light. Haha, create all things in the world and derive infinite universe. Xuanhuan, can you do these things now? Kill me when I am weakest, and I will repay you well in the future. And I am different, I will crush you to death easily when you are strongest. God chuckled, a warm smile bloomed on his face, but the words he said were extremely cold. After saying this, God gently picked up the book of light in front of him, glanced at it again, and spoke to the hazy and dim chaos in front of him. I say, let there be light. After God finished speaking, the Bible of light in his hand gently turned a page. And God's voice seemed to have some kind of supreme power of law. An invisible wave emanated from the Bible of light in his hand, instantly encompassing this vast chaotic area. At the same time, the avenue of this chaotic world also began to vibrate slightly, and began to resonate with the invisible wave emanating from the Bible. In an instant, endless light began to spread from it, spreading throughout the boundless chaos around, making this hazy and dim chaos become bright at this moment. Looking at the surroundings, although it has become bright, it is still wrapped in the chaos. The power of chaos is surging, just like the chaotic water in a chaotic ocean. God spoke again. I said, there should be air between the waters. As the voice fell, the Bible of light in front of him turned a page again, and an invisible wave swept out again. Buzz. An invisible repulsive force, with the Bible of light as the center, repelled the surrounding chaotic power, forming a vast void space. I say, there should be something that carries things in the world, the earth, mountains, rivers, seas, and lakes. The endless chaotic power outside the void space was swallowed up by the void space, and below the void space, it quickly gathered and evolved to form the earth, mountains, rivers, seas, and oceans. From then on, there was a difference between the upper and the lower, and the universe was judged. The heaven and the earth were divided, and the universe began to exist. Looking at the world where the heaven and the earth were first judged, and looking at the Bible of light that was emitting endless light and illuminating the whole world, God spoke again. I say, the heaven and the earth should have the sun and the moon, billions of stars, the sun and the moon rotate, there are day and night, the stars move, and the 4 seasons flow. The Bible of light turned the page again, the light dissipated, but the world swallowed up the endless chaotic power, and evolved endless sun, moon, and stars in the void above the earth. So that the sun, moon, and stars rotate in the world again, illuminating the heaven and earth. I said, there should be life in the world, flowers, trees, birds, beasts, insects, and fish. The Bible of light turned a page, and the earth gradually became green, and life was also born in the ocean. All kinds of plants and animals began to appear, making the world full of vitality. I said, I should create a kind of intelligent life in my image and name it man. The Bible of light turned a page, and humans were born in the world. After doing this, God turned another page of the Bible of light, thought carefully, and now it seemed that there was nothing to create. Then, he can also take a rest. Yuan Meng stood in the void chaos, watching God create the world in 7 days, and then fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, there were already disputes, good and evil in the world. So, God created the bright heaven and the regional abyss. Those who are kind and believe in God will ascend to the beautiful and bright heaven and serve God. Those who are evil and unbelievers will fall into the bitter hell and suffer, and be bullied and oppressed by the regional devils. While God was sleeping, in another chaos, the ancient gods began to wake up one after another, creating the world. Under the time flow speed deliberately adjusted by Yuan Meng, those worlds have gone through a long time in a very short time, and have evolved and perfected their own gods. It is only a matter of time before they can step into the realm of reality and become real life and gods. When these divine systems evolved and perfected, Yuan Meng thought about it and restored the normal flow of time to the chaos that had accelerated the flow of time. Even under Yuan Meng's control, the flow of time in these worlds, including the flow of time in the prehistoric world, was constantly slowing down. The ratio of the flow of time with the blue star world was constantly shrinking. 100 million times, 10,000 times, 100 times, 10 times, and in the end, the flow of time with the blue star world was completely unified and synchronized. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 206. Huh. What is this? Faith. Incense. Sacrifice from another world. When the time of these worlds is completely synchronized with the time of Blue Star, the many powerful beings above the Hedeo realm in the prehistoric world, as well as other gods and spirits, all looked up and looked at the void in front of them. While they were shocked, all the powerful beings and spirits looked at the void in front of them, and their minds followed the induction in the dark and explored across the endless void. However, the induction was only vague and not very clear, and everyone could not completely determine the coordinates and really descend. For this situation, most of the gods gave up the plan to descend. However, there were also some gods who directly separated a trace of their divine thoughts and carried a part of their power to the place where they sensed. As for whether they could really arrive, they didn't really care, just as a casual attempt when they were bored. Anyway, at most, it was just a loss of a trace of divine consciousness. For them, it was not even considered an injury. Just like when a human pulls out a hair, no one ever feels that they are injured. To be honest, the existence with the highest probability of descending is the group of powerful Taoist masters in the prehistoric world, or the god of the bright heaven. The powerful Taoist masters in the prehistoric world have a higher realm, so they naturally have a clearer sense. The god of the bright heaven has the largest number of believers, so the sensed coordinates are naturally clearer. However, God is not very interested in these. He spends more time thinking about how to improve his strength and give Haoshan God a big surprise when he meets him in the future. Therefore, he only informed the angel sitting down, and if anyone is willing, he will try to descend his power. Many of the powerful Taoist masters in the prehistoric world have descended their own power. Anyway, they all do it casually. If they succeed, they will have a new world for them to understand and analyze new rules. If they fail, they will not lose anything. As for the true immortals, in the present prehistoric world, true immortals, including those below true immortals, are basically native life forms of the prehistoric world. Rather than those innate sacred beings and demon gods that were just born with the faith of the sentient beings on Blue Star. They naturally cannot sense the faith, sacrifice, and belief of the sentient beings from Blue Star. And those innate sacred beings and demon gods who have legendary beliefs on Blue Star in the real world have basically achieved the state of Taoism now. Even if they have not achieved the state of Taoism, they are already very close, and can be regarded as half-step Taoism. At this time, they can't care about other things. Naturally, those who can come to Blue Star at this time can only be those who are at the level of Taoism. At this time on Blue Star, on the Mission Mountain in Shenzhou, someone is worshipping the Three Pure Ones. But at this time, the statue of the Three Pure Ones sitting at the top has a faint light, although it is not very obvious in broad daylight. But in the crowd below, a young Taoist priest accidentally raised his head and was stunned on the spot. At this time, the young Taoist priest stared blankly at the statue of the Three Pure Ones, which was very conspicuous among the crowd of people bowing down. Xuanhuan, What are you doing? There was a person beside him, and I gently pulled his sleeve again and reminded him in a low voice. The three pure ones Taoist ancestors are shining and showing their spirits. Xuanhuan, who was in a daze, did not react at all. He raised his hand and pointed at the statue of the three pure ones. And his voice was not small at all. It spread to every corner in this silent hall. Among the younger disciples, many people looked up in astonishment and looked at where Xuanhuan was, with a look of shock and gloating in their eyes. Many disciples did not expect that Xuanhuan, who was usually dull, would dare to make a loud noise when worshipping the three pure ones Taoist ancestors, which would be punished. Xuanhuan, what are you talking about? Beside him, the man who reminded Xuanhuan before couldn't help but feel angry and anxious, and raised his voice slightly, and reminded again in a low and urgent voice. Really, look at the statue of the three pure ones, the three pure ones have appeared. Xuanhuan did not stop, but shouted again, and then bowed down directly. The three pure ones are above, the disciple Xuanhuan bows down. Looking at Xuanhuan's actions, everyone couldn't help but look at the statue of the three pure ones above. Wow! And this look immediately caused a commotion. The three pure ones have appeared. The three pure ones have appeared. The three pure ones have appeared. And after the commotion, everyone reacted and bowed down hurriedly. The three pure ones are above, disciple Chixing bows sincerely. The three pure ones are above, disciple. The sound of bowing one sentence after another rang out, making the many teachers in front, who seemed slightly unhappy because of Xuanhuan's previous loud noise, just prepared to punish him after this worship ceremony. At this time, they couldn't help but raise their heads and look at the statues of the three pure ones above. In their hearts, they have already made up their minds that after this worship ceremony, they must clean up these useless disciples. They have worshipped the three pure ones for their entire lives, and even after the spiritual energy has revived, they will worship them more devoutly. However, they have never seen the three pure ones appear. It can be said that these people are the most devout people, and they are also the ones who least believe in the existence of the three pure ones. They said that what they worship devoutly is not the three pure ones, but the avenue represented by the three pure ones. However, when they raised their heads, they saw a scene they had never seen in their lives. The statue of the three pure ones sitting above was emitting a faint mysterious light. Although it was as faint as smoke, it could be clearly seen with everyone's current eyesight. In fact, not only in Mission, but also in some other famous temples and Taoist temples with prosperous incense, all kinds of magical scenes have emerged. In addition to Shenzhou, other places where people worship and believe in gods also have mysterious scenes. Not only these places, but also those more famous tombs and former residences of celebrities have mysterious brilliance. And the more famous and the larger the scale of the sacrifice, the more powerful the power brilliance will be. Of course, many of the visions in those tombs are unknown. After all, the owners of these tombs are buried deep underground. If they have not been unearthed by archaeologists, even if there are large-scale magnificent visions, they will not be known. Like the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor and the tomb of Cao. What do you think, if these visions exceed the scale of the tombs? Well, at least for now, with the power cast by those gods and the strong men of the Dao, it is still impossible to reach that level for the time being. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 207. The appearance of various large-scale magical scenes naturally immediately attracted the attention of the top leaders of various major forces. Reading. In their view, this means that the erosion of the prehistoric world or other worlds on Blue Star has become more serious. The various consequences after the advent of these gods make them deeply worried. If these gods have no intention of the secular affairs of Blue Star, it will be fine. Once they become interested in Blue Star, then, whether it is those evil gods or those righteous gods, it will be a fatal impact on the current national system. Even, this is enough to cause the collapse of the entire social order, causing the blue star forces to reshuffle and restore to the social order of the past, where the imperial power is granted by God and the imperial power is granted by heaven. Those evil gods will even stir up bloody storms on Blue Star, and even carry out various evil sacrifices. And the advent of those righteous gods is not necessarily good for most of the human beings today. After all, in today's materialistic society, how many people are pure in heart and uphold justice? It is only because of the constraints of various laws that it appears peaceful and kind. For today's human beings, as long as this person does not violate the law and does not touch the moral bottom line, he is already considered a good person, at least not enough to be judged. However, those gods who come down may not necessarily care about the laws of Blue Star. More likely, they will punish these humans who violate their principles in their own way. And many of them, according to the laws and principles of today's people, must be innocent. This conflict between the two sides, with a high probability, will end with the victory of the gods. This situation will not be seen in the short term, but over time, it will inevitably lead to a significant reduction in the credibility of today's laws. As a result, today's human beings no longer use the law as a code of conduct, but tend to pray to gods and Buddhas. Then, this will inevitably lead to human laws becoming a dead letter and social order collapsing. Some people may say that we should regulate human beings according to the principles of gods. Haha, those gods are all very self-centered, and the principles of each god are different. How can you unify the principles? Maybe if you follow the rules of this god, you will be attacked by another god. Based on this situation, the leaders of various forces gathered together almost at the same time to discuss the impact of the gods coming to the world. What we are worried about has finally come. In the Supreme Council Hall of Shenzhou, a leader took a puff of cigarette and said worriedly in the smoke, "Alas! We can only take one step at a time and see what happens. I just hope that these immortals and gods are really bound by the rules of heaven and cannot easily interfere in mundane affairs. That's all we can do. However, we can't put all our hopes on the illusory rules of heaven and heaven. We still have to make the necessary preparations." A general, with a gloomy face, could only say helplessly, but at the end, he emphasized again that they also needed to make some preparations. Even, be prepared for the coming of war. After the general finished speaking, the others nodded with heavy expressions. Okay, maybe things are not that serious, don't those myths and legends also say that? The human emperor also has the ability to rule the world, and the dragon energy of humanity can suppress those evil immortals and gods. For example, the legendary Saint Nuo was once blocked by the luck of the Shang dynasty, right? As the supreme leader, Xuanhuan couldn't help but smile and comfort everyone at this time. That's true. Although we don't have the emperor now, isn't the way we gave birth to leaders similar to that of the ancient human race? Perhaps the luck of the human race can slightly suppress those immortals and gods. The rest of the people also laughed and agreed, but there was inevitably a bit of bitterness in their smiles. However, what else can they do? It is the other national forces outside Shenzhou that are not as unwilling and desperate as the leaders of Shenzhou. Because only the leaders of Shenzhou who stand at a higher level can know the horror of those immortals and gods, which is completely beyond the ability of humans today to contend with. After all, even the strongest among them are still an insurmountable distance from the real realm of immortals and gods. And even these mortal practitioners, after basically reaching the realm of the domain, are immune to most of the technological weapons on Blue Star today. Even the nuclear weapons used as trump cards by various countries are unlikely to have a fatal impact on them, let alone the realm of breaking the void above the domain. That is to be able to step into the starry sky with the physical body and cross the starry sky with one's own strength. Reaching that realm, a small planet like Blue Star, not to mention that it can be destroyed with a wave of the hand, will not pose any threat to them. After all, they are in space, how can they, the humans who have not yet left Blue Star, fight with them. They can only be beaten, and cannot make the slightest counterattack. Even, as long as they are given a little time, they can completely destroy Blue Star. How can the humans in it survive? And this is just the practitioners among mortals, and they are far from reaching the limit of mortal practice. Then how powerful are those real immortals? I am afraid that as long as they move their fingers, they can destroy Blue Star thousands of times. Faced with such a gap between heaven and earth, what can they do? Although even in the face of such a nearly desperate situation, everyone is actively preparing for countermeasures. However, deep in their hearts, they are actually a little desperate, and can only pin their future on the good intentions of those immortals. Or in the legend, those illusory human luck and the dragon energy of the imperial way. And those countries and forces outside Shenzhou have just stepped into the practice, and even the leaders of those countries and forces have not really practiced yet. After all, such unknown practice methods still require a lot of practice, and only after ensuring absolute safety will they try to practice. Of course, some leaders of some forces have already started practicing at the first time. These places are often the countries and forces around Shenzhou that are deeply influenced by Shenzhou culture. In addition to these, there are countries and forces that are deeply affected by strange and supernatural events. They are on the verge of collapse. As long as there is a glimmer of hope and possibility, they will grab it tightly like the last straw. However, even the strongest of these people who first accepted the practice, they only reached the state of picking flowers and flying leaves, and they did not have a very accurate understanding of the power of immortals and gods. Although they also think that immortals and gods must be very powerful. However, they do not think that humans have no power to fight back. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 208. Because the leaders of other countries and forces outside Shenzhou have not cultivated to a very high level. Read. This makes them not have a very clear understanding of the power of cultivation when they really reach a high level, let alone the understanding of immortals and gods. They think that some of the weapons of mankind can at least severely damage those immortals and gods, or even kill them. Especially the nuclear weapons, space-based weapons, and even those high-energy laser weapons that are about to be put into use in the hands of various major powers. Therefore, although they think that the advent of immortals and gods will lead to great changes in Blue Star, they also think that this is an opportunity. After all, there are worlds behind these immortals and gods. Among them, there will naturally be a large number of resources and various magical technologies and abilities, such as magic, Taoism, or treasures, magic weapons, magic supplies, etc. Of course, the more important thing is the production method of these treasures. With these technologies, can they achieve wholesale mass production with their current scientific and technological strength? If this is true, if they can occupy these worlds, it will definitely make their country's national strength a qualitative improvement. Just when the top leaders of various countries and forces on Blue Star were actively making various preparations because those gods were about to come. The powerful people in the prehistoric times, and the gods above the main gods of other gods. Because of the divine power they invested, after the manifestation of the saint on Blue Star, they gained more and more devout beliefs, which greatly strengthened the cause and effect relationship between each other. Slowly, they can really bring their own mental power to Blue Star. I'm back. Hey. What's going on? What's back? I have always been a congenital human race in the prehistoric world. I just came to this world. How could I have the idea of coming back again? In a coffin in the deepest part of the mausoleum of the first Qin emperor, a corpse that had been dead for more than 2,000 years suddenly opened his eyes and murmured hoarsely. Then the voice stopped, and the dead mausoleum of the first Qin emperor returned to its former dead silence. After a while, the voice sounded again, but there was already a sense of enlightenment. So, I was affected by the owner of this body? or the time and space distance between the prehistoric world and this world is too far. And this world does not belong to the prehistoric world, but is slightly affected by the radiation of some prehistoric power. This is why my mental power cannot come too much, and I am affected by the residual thoughts of this body. However, the faith and willpower gathered by the owner of this body is really huge. It turns out that there is also Yang Zheng in this world. It's a pity that Yang Zheng in this world is just an ordinary person and has not embarked on the path of cultivation. It's really a pity. The first emperor Yang Zheng's mind probed out, feeling this body and the information of those faith and willpower that permeated around it. Although the marks left in this body and the information contained in those faith and willpower are extremely incomplete and complicated, it is enough for him to sort out many things. The first emperor of this world, Yang Zheng, ruled the world with the remaining strength of 6 generations, but died in the 2nd generation. It was really a pity for the prehistoric Yang Zheng who felt this. The first emperor of the prehistoric world, Yang Zheng, gathered the kings of the Qin dynasty and established the Qin Empire in the prehistoric world. He was the first monarch of the Qin Empire and the first emperor of the Qin Empire. In addition, he opened up a huge world in other dimensions of the prehistoric world. Moreover, the first emperor Yang Zheng, together with other true immortals and combined existences of the empire, opened up another world. Finally, the world opened up by the first emperor Yang Zheng formed a huge multi-empire of immortal Qin. After sorting out this information and having a vague impression of the current world, hiss, Yang Zheng tried to manipulate this body and slowly got up. The body, which had long been rotten and stiff, made unbearable sounds, and occasionally accompanied by the sound of cloth tearing. Bang. I almost forgot that this is in the coffin. Yang Zheng's head hit the lid of the coffin, and the movement of getting up was stagnant, and he lay down again. The already weak power of divine thought, coupled with this rotten and stiff body, obviously made Yang Zheng's thinking reaction slow down a lot. Bang! Bang! Yang Zheng lay down again, stretched out his arms stiffly, and pushed the lid of the coffin above with force. However, although there was a slight shake, there was no sign of opening at all. Yang Zheng was slightly stunned, and then he smiled bitterly. He was just a divine thought that descended now, and he did not have the kind of great power in the prehistoric world. The thought opened the sky, and the wave of the hand destroyed the world. He was not even as good as an ordinary person now. He was just a dried corpse that had been dead for more than 2,000 years. After reacting, Yang Zheng put down his arms and lay down again, and began to slowly mobilize the surrounding spiritual energy, slowly gathering it towards the body he was possessed by. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth flows in the body, constantly nourishing and strengthening Yang Zheng's body, slowly increasing his physical strength. I believe that soon, he will have the power to break the coffin. As for the power to mobilize the rules, forcibly destroy the coffin in front of him. Yang Zheng thought about it at first. Unfortunately, Yang Zheng only descended a trace of divine thought, and did not have much power to mobilize the rules. And the most important thing is that in this world, there is no rule power that Yang Zheng has proved. What Yang Zheng proved is the rule of the emperor, ruling the people and controlling all laws. This blue star where the spiritual energy has just revived and the rules are just a little active, does not exist any emperor rules. Although the divine thought that Yang Zheng descended also contains a trace of the emperor's rules. However, he did not dare to use it easily, and even did not dare to mobilize other rules with it. Because this world does not contain the emperor's rules. Then, as long as Yang Zheng shows the power of the emperor's rules, he will usher in the oppression of other rules in the whole world. Eventually, the imperial rules will be destroyed, including Yang Zheng's divine consciousness, which will be wiped out. If it were just this, it would not be a big deal. What Yang Zheng feared was the destruction of the body he depended on. After all, this was the body that best suited him, and he probably couldn't find a second one in the entire world. Therefore, if it wasn't a particularly urgent situation, Ying Zhen would not give it up, at most it would just take some time. He had spent billions of years, countless years, and was there still a little time left? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 209. And when the first Emperor Ying Zhen was thinking of ways to restore his physical strength. In other places, spiritual thoughts from ancient times and other worlds began to appear, and they truly arrived on the blue star. Of course, there are good and bad things in this. In a valley near the border of China, a sloppy young man was eating and sucking a wild tiger. The raw kind. Inevitably, this caused his body, which was already extremely sloppy, to be stained with blood again. After drinking enough blood, the young man immediately sat cross-legged and began practicing as usual. Along with the young man's movement, strands of scarlet light bloomed, and finally converged into a small river of blood, swirling around him and growing stronger little by little. Gradually, first of all, the blood stains on his body were quickly absorbed by the blood river. Even in front of him, the tiger that had been dead for a long time had strands of essence and blood rising up, turning into a thin blood mist, being pulled and swallowed by the river of blood. As a result, the tiger's body gradually shriveled up, and finally turned into a mummy, as if it had been dead for decades. Ouch ho! Along with the silent tiger roar, a tiger suddenly jumped out from the corpse of the beast. Woo! After the tiger phantom jumped out, it immediately roared towards the young man who was practicing, and let out a ferocious and frightening roar. At this moment, the young man opened his eyes suddenly, a bloody red light flashed, and he looked fiercely at the tiger in front of him. Ouch ow! The tiger seemed to be greatly frightened, like a cat that had been encountering a natural enemy. It whimpered and shrank towards the location of his own body. Ha ha! Little one, I happen to be lacking something in this river of blood. It's just a good time to see if my idea is correct. I'm really giving you an advantage. The young man's mouth twitched, revealing an inexplicable smile, and murmured in a low voice. As his thoughts turned, the river of blood swirling around him immediately made a soft splash, like a real river, flowing towards the phantom of the tiger. Originally, the tiger was just a ghost shadow of a soul and should not be touched. However, when the blood river came into contact with the tiger's phantom, there were blood-colored rivers entwining towards it. And there was a constant blood-colored mist, blending into the tiger's soul shadow, and the soul shadow that was originally like a thin white mist was gradually saturated with a touch of blood. Ouch! 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 The phantom of the tiger roared loudly, and even in reality, his roar could be vaguely heard. And as the bloody mist continued to merge into the tiger's shadow, it gradually infected it and turned into a bloody tiger. The roar that could be heard by real life became louder and louder. Even in the end, it seemed as if there was a real tiger roaring in this hidden valley. It's really not easy. I didn't expect that the soul of a mere beast would be so difficult to assimilate and control. If it were a human soul, wouldn't it be even more difficult to assimilate and control it? Fortunately, I didn't think about swallowing and assimilating the souls of those bastards at the beginning. The young man whispered to himself, and at the end of the sentence, his eyes showed a fierce look. But does this beast also have a soul? I have killed so many animals before, but I have never seen their souls. Looking at the bloody tiger that was galloping and roaring above the blood river, the young man showed a slightly puzzled expression. But immediately, he put it behind him. Whether these beasts could give birth to souls had nothing to do with him. On the contrary, those in the government should be more nervous, right? But to be honest, this method of swallowing essence and blood is really fast. In less than a year, he has gone from his initial entry to the current level of the field. Although I am just entering the field for the first time. But it is completely different from before. Before the Gangchi realm, they are just ordinary martial arts masters. When they reach the Gangchi realm, they are the top masters. Even when he reaches the realm of heaven and man, he can already mobilize some of the power of heaven and earth to a certain extent. However, it seems reasonable to say that he is a high-level martial arts master. Once I reach the realm of the realm, and I am the master within the realm, it will be almost divided into two worlds from the previous realm, and the difference cannot be calculated based on reason. This is no different from the immortal gods in myths and legends. Of course, this is completely incomparable with the realm of true immortality created by Nuwa in the prehistoric world. However, this can already be seen. The realm of the realm and the realm below the realm are already two completely different levels. At least it gave the young man the impression that he had just entered the 8th level of the realm. However, he can easily crush the 7th level celestial realm. He doesn't even need to do it himself. The young man waved, and the blood river flowing and circling in the distance was slowly flowing towards him. And the speed doesn't seem to be fast, just like a real river, flowing slowly and quietly. However, in the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of him. With a slight movement of his palm, the blood river shrank rapidly, and finally, it turned into a blood river as thick as a chopstick, connected end to end, flowing quietly on his palm. And the blood-colored tiger became only the size of an ant, but it seemed to be unaware of it, still running and roaring on the blood river. As soon as the young man thought, the blood-colored tiger that was running and roaring on the blood river suddenly turned into a blood light, flew out of the blood river in his palm, and fell on the ground in front of him. A roar. After the blood light fell on the ground, it grew in the wind, and in a blink of an eye, it turned into a blood tiger with a fierce and evil aura, and roared towards the sky. As the young man's thoughts turned, the blood tiger transformed by the blood light immediately pounced on the boulder in front. Bang! Swish! Swish! The tiger's palm fell, making a deafening sound, and the whole boulder was broken into pieces, and bursts of corrosion sounds were heard. The broken boulders were all infected with some crimson, and thick smoke rose up. The whole stone was corroded quickly, and even the ground under the stone was corroded into pits. Then, under the control of the young man, the blood tiger roared, and the crimson color that was corroding the earth and stones quickly gathered into strands of blood lines, which sank into the blood tiger's body one by one. Ha ha, good. A gleam of light flashed in the young man's eyes. As he thought, with the power of the blood river, corroding and assimilating the soul, turning into a puppet in the blood river, he could control the power of the blood river more easily. Even with just one thought from him, the blood river puppet could follow its instincts and attack autonomously. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 210. If the blood river can devour billions of souls and directly form billions of puppet armies. When the young man thought of this, his face was full of longing. When that time comes, he will be the only one, and he will have the confidence to sweep the world. How could he be like now, being chased and embarrassed, like a stray dog? Read. But now, we still have to avoid this disaster first. He. What? You have been watching for so long, but you still don't show up. Do you want to let me go? Although his clothes were messy and he was in a mess, the young man stood proudly with his hands behind his back, and laughed coldly with disdain. In addition to the blood river surrounding him and the blood tiger whimpering in front of him, he really looked like a master of magic. Ling Xiao, I advise you to surrender, you can't escape. A woman wearing a uniform of the Demon Suppression Division appeared silently on the top of a hill on one side of the valley, looking solemnly at the young man surrounded by the blood river, that is, Ling Xiao. The Demon Suppression Division is a newly established department in Shenzhou that specializes in arresting and suppressing those who disrupt social order, bully, and even kill the people of Shenzhou by relying on their cultivation. Haha, Xuanhuan, do you think you can really stop me? What's more, I have now achieved the realm of the domain. If I really want to kill you, it's just a matter of seconds. Looking at Xuanhuan standing on the top of the hill, Ling Xiao laughed loudly, and then said indifferently. Alas! Why are you doing this? Although what you have done is serious, it is excusable after all, as long as you plead guilty. At most, you will be suppressed in the Demon Suppression Tower for dozens or hundreds of years. With your current cultivation level, your lifespan is still equivalent to that of a teenager. Although he knew it was useless, Xuanhuan still persuaded him again. Haha. Dozens or hundreds of years, that's all. I have only practiced for a year and have entered the realm. Dozens or hundreds of years, I am afraid I will have become an immortal. You ask me to stay in that damn demon suppression tower for dozens or hundreds of years. Are you stupid or am I stupid? Besides, since you know that I am excusable, why bother to force me? Why don't you just let me go? I don't want to do anything to you. Ling Xiao laughed again, but his expression became colder as he laughed. Especially at the end, he showed a cold murderous intent. It seems that you will not surrender. Hee, you ask even though you know the answer. If you hadn't been so cautious, I would have killed you long ago. I didn't expect you to be so ungrateful and keep pestering me. Hee, is that so? Xuanhuan smiled lightly, and the aura around him began to rise and bloom gradually. Lines of rules crisscrossed around him, forming a big net called rules. In this, the rules set by Xuanhuan must be followed. And Xuanhuan's rules are her own understanding of the laws of Shenzhou. That is to say, under the cover of this big net, no matter who it is, as long as they do not exceed Xuanhuan's realm, they need to act in accordance with the laws of Shenzhou. Otherwise, they will be suppressed by this net of rules. The more serious the law violated, the greater the suppression. Of course, when Xuanhuan casts this net of rules, she also needs to act in accordance with the laws of Shenzhou. For example, if someone committed a capital crime, as long as he did not resist, then no matter how bad his crime was, no matter how disgusted Xuanhuan was, and how murderous she was, she could not kill him, she could only arrest him and wait for the government's trial. And this network of rules is Xuanhuan's domain. That's right, Xuanhuan is also in the realm of the domain, and even the time for promotion is a little longer than Ling Xiao. In fact, the path that Xuanhuan wants to take is the way of the legalists, based on the laws of a country, to build a network of laws and laws that encompass all the people in the world. Under the cover of this legal network, no one can do anything that violates the law. Once something that violates the law is done, it will be suppressed by the legal network. It's a pity that Xuanhuan's realm is too far away, and her understanding of the law has not really been thoroughly comprehended. Therefore, at most, it can only form a network of rules within its own domain. If Xuanhuan's realm is the peak of the Hedao realm, and he can fully understand and comprehend the law, then, he may not be able to prove the true immortal with this, and form a legal network with various laws and regulations to cover the entire Shenzhou land. However, whether it is his own realm or his understanding of the law, Xuanhuan has not reached the requirements. The domain gradually spread, and in a short time, it has covered the entire valley. Feeling the suppression and restraint on his body, and looking at the blood river in front of him, Ling Xiao's face was extremely gloomy. He didn't understand why Xuanhuan's domain, who was also in the realm of the first entry, could cover the entire valley. Even this may be just the radius of Xuanhuan's domain, not the area of the entire domain. And his own domain is just a blood river that is not even a small river, and can even be called a small ditch. Because his blood river is only 2 or 3 meters wide, even in length, it can only extend more than 100 meters at most. Is it true that the country's resources and support are so important that even the initial domain is much stronger than that of ordinary people? In this case, is there any need for him to resist? Thinking of this, Ling Xiao's face was uncertain and hesitant. However, thinking of the reason for his escape and the fact that he would be suppressed by the demon suppression tower for 100 years, Ling Xiao felt a surge of anger in his heart. Moreover, even if he was defeated by the demon suppression tower, could he not even escape? Ling Xiao was worried, and Zhen Wuxuan on the opposite side was not much better. Ling Xiao didn't she know? The reason why the area of the two domains was so different was that one was more auxiliary and needed to be expanded to a large extent and become invisible. If a law network was formed, it would need to be thoroughly spread out to cover the entire Shenzhou. It might even be necessary to cover the entire blue star, the solar system, or even the larger interstellar domain. On the other hand, Ling Xiao's domain is completely combat-oriented, tending to condense and manifest form. This is the difference between Zhen Wuxuan, who was born in a normal family, and Ling Xiao, who fled everywhere and rarely paid attention to the outside world. Under normal circumstances, as one's own progress, others will also progress together, as well as those who are already in a high realm. There will always be a large number of people in the same realm, who can discuss and compare with each other, and naturally they can clearly know the differences between each other. However, Ling Xiao, who has been fleeing alone, has no people in the same realm to compare and discuss. He naturally does not know that the domains of different people can also be divided into many types. Condensation, dispersion, combat, assistance, etc. These different forms of domain expression do not represent the combat effectiveness of both sides. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 211. As a member of the Demon Suppression Division, Zhen Wuxuan is very aware of the differences between various fields. Read. Otherwise, she would not have been able to hide her figure and not come out before, and she would have repeatedly persuaded Ling Xiao to give up resistance. Just because her field is more oriented toward assistance rather than direct combat. It seems to be a vast area, but in fact it has no direct combat effectiveness. Compared with combat fields like Ling Xiao, it was not so obvious before the condensation field. However, after condensing the field, the gap between the two becomes very obvious. She said so much before, and now she has expanded her field to cover the entire valley. It was nothing more than wanting to shock Ling Xiao and delay some time. However, Ling Xiao was able to escape capture time and time again, so he was naturally a decisive and agile person. Now that I have made up my mind, there is nothing more to say. Humph. Kill. Ling Xiao snorted coldly, and then shouted loudly at Zhen Wuxuan. The next moment, the bloody tiger in front of him, with a murderous and ferocious aura, suddenly jumped out, turned into a bloody rainbow, and rushed towards Zhen Wuxuan. The reason why Ling Xiao used the blood tiger was not to attack and kill him directly. It was nothing more than a test to see if Zhen Wuxuan's strength was truly unmatchable. Also, let's see the limits of the blood tiger. If it can only stay by your side, its effectiveness will be greatly reduced. Town. Zhen Wuxuan frowned, stretched out her hand and pressed down slightly, and softly uttered one word. Buzz. The realm that enveloped the entire valley shook slightly, and a pressure came instantly, covering the whole body of the blood tiger, and instantly stagnated its lightning-fast figure. The devil is evil, death is not a pity, kill him. Zhen Wuxuan naturally had nothing to be polite about such an evil creature as the blood tiger, and naturally killed him directly. The jade hand then pressed down, and a force came again, but it was no longer the suppressive and restraining force before. Rather, it is a force that contains an explosive aura. Bang! After all, The blood tiger was just a blood river puppet conceived after the soul of the tiger was eroded and assimilated within the Lingxiao blood river domain. Facing the direct killing from Zhen Wushuan's domain, he naturally had no resistance, and was directly beaten to death, turning into a bloody mist. Humph, my bloody tiger is not that simple. Looking at the bloody tiger that was easily defeated, Ling Xiao couldn't help but snorted secretly. Then there was a thought in his heart. The blood tiger that had been blasted into a ball of blood mist gathered together again and turned into a blood tiger again. It roared upwards and pounced on Zhen Wushuan again. Bang! However, the bloody tiger had just jumped up, and it was already coming towards him with a violent force. Just like before, without the slightest resistance, the bloody tiger exploded again and turned into a bloody mist again. This time, before the blood tigers could gather together again, Zhen Wushuan had already opened his mouth to scold him. The world is pure and clear, and the universe is purified. Buzz. The field shook, and a mysterious light emerged from nowhere, blooming throughout the field. At the same time, there is an air of righteousness and masculinity permeating the air, which resists all evil and evil spirits. But in the blink of an eye, the blood mist exploded by the bloody tiger had been quickly purified and eliminated, leaving no trace left. Even the river of blood lingering around Ling Xiao was being continuously purified. Humph. No wonder you dare to chase me alone, you really have some skills. Feeling the dissipating power in the blood river, Ling Xiao couldn't help but snort. However, deep down in Ling Xiao's heart, he was secretly relieved. Because, he found that Zhen Wushuan's domain power did have some power to restrain himself. But its power is not as powerful as I imagined. Wow! Ling Xiao waved towards the blood river, and a stream of blood immediately rose up, solidified in an instant, and turned into a bloody long sword, which quickly flew out of the blood river and landed in his hand. Cut! The moment he grasped the long sword, Ling Xiao had already slashed towards Zhen Wushuan with a powerful thrust. A sharp bloody sword light tore through Zhen Wushuan's domain barrier, cutting off the threads of rules that weaved into a web of rules. I am a law enforcement officer in China. The power of evil spirits cannot harm me. Disperse. Like golden words, the power of the entire field quickly retracted and shrouded the bloody sword light. At the same time, a force descended from the void and merged into Zhen Wushuan's domain, causing the power of his domain to surge instantly. And the bloody sword light that slashed towards Zhen Wushuan completely disintegrated, and even the corrosive power of the blood river was eliminated together. Ha! It turns out that your field is just a superficial product. Ha ha ha! It really made me laugh to death. With your little ability, you actually dare to chase me alone. You are really brave. Although the sword light he slashed was easily disintegrated and eliminated by Zhen Wushuan. However, Ling Xiao didn't take it seriously at all. Instead, he laughed wantonly, with a look of ridicule on his face. Just by cutting out a sword light, Zhen Wushuan had to use the power of the entire field, and even unknown powers were attracted by it. Then Zhen Wushuan's strength must be inferior to his own, at least in terms of attack and fighting. Die! Ha ha ha! Ling Xiao was surrounded by a river of blood, and instantly turned into a long blood-colored rainbow, rushing towards Zhen Wushuan. Moreover, the blood-colored longsword in his hand suddenly burst into brilliant blood light, and was stabbed out with force. Swish! Wherever the blood-colored sword light passed, the space began to distort slightly. Looking at the sharp sword light stabbing straight at him, Zhen Wushuan's face was extremely solemn, and his figure instantly turned into a stream of light, flying rapidly backwards. Moreover, as her thoughts moved, the majestic domain power instantly enveloped Ling Xiao's figure, suppressing and restraining his strength and speed. At the same time, Zhen Wushuan's right hand brushed across his left wrist, and a heavy spear with a full sense of technology, which was 3 or 4 meters long, suddenly appeared in his hand. It turned out that the exquisite bracelet on her left wrist was a storage bracelet. It stored all the items she needed. The heavy spear she took out was the latest product of the Shenzhou Research Institute, which was developed with great effort by combining technology, formations, and prohibitions in practice. Its power far exceeded that of today's technological weapons. Because of the concentrated energy, its power in a single-point attack was no weaker than the power of the core of a nuclear bomb explosion, and it might even be higher. Even if it was a peak existence in the field, if it was hit directly in the vitals, it would be enough to kill it in one blow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 212. The new weapon developed by the Research Institute is indeed very powerful. Read. However, because it has just been successfully developed, it is still impossible to achieve large-scale mass production, and can only be produced and distributed on a small scale. It is often equipped in extremely important positions, such as the Demon Suppression Division where Xuanhuan is located. Moreover, the energy supply of this weapon is also a big problem. It requires a huge amount of external energy infusion to operate at full power. If there is no external energy supply, even if it is just an ordinary energy attack, it takes a long time to gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth before it can reach the conditions for excitation. Although it can be charged in advance, the energy filled in advance is not enough to support full power operation. Even if it is just an ordinary attack, there is only one chance. If you want to attack again, you need to gather energy again. Therefore, it is only equipped for those who have reached the realm above the realm and can quickly replenish their energy to deal with emergencies. It is precisely because of various reasons. If it were not for Xuanhuan, who happened to break through to the realm before this mission, he would not be qualified to equip this weapon. This heavy spear with a full sense of technology is called Yuanling Spear. It means a weapon that uses Yuanli and spiritual energy as energy to launch powerful attacks. The moment this Yuanling spear appeared, the powerful Yuanli in Xuanhuan's body began to flow into it frantically. A little blue light appeared at the top of the Yuanling spear, and it became brighter and brighter. As the target of the attack, Ling Xiao's face changed drastically when this Yuanling spear appeared, and his sensitive nerves began to warn frantically. Danger! 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 You will die if you can't avoid it. With almost no hesitation, the blood river that had been entangled around his body began to burn with blood flames, blooming with more brilliant blood light. This made Ling Xiao's already extremely fast speed rise to a higher level again. At the same time, he cursed in his heart, "You little girl, you don't follow the rules of the rivers and lakes. Shouldn't the battle between us cultivators be a battle of swords and swords, with you coming and going?" Well, it was a back and forth battle. But, isn't it a bit unreasonable and a bit too bullying for you to directly take out high-tech weapons? Seeing that his speed had become a little faster. But the speed of Xuanhuan on the opposite side was not much slower, and coupled with the suppression and restraint of Xuanhuan's domain. This made it even more difficult for Ling Xiao to catch up with Xuanhuan in a short time. Seeing that the energy gathered on the Yuanling spear was about to reach its limit, Ling Xiao could no longer care about severely injuring Xuanhuan, and turned around and rushed. Well, Ling Xiao had never thought of killing Xuanhuan, at most he would just seriously injure him. After all, although Xuanhuan was not a big shot, he was a real elite member of the Demon Suppression Division. He was younger than himself, but he had already reached the realm of the domain. If he really killed Xuanhuan, the official elite of the Demon Suppression Division, then, there would be a great possibility that the real strong men in the Demon Suppression Division would come to hunt him down. Ling Xiao didn't believe that Xuanhuan, who didn't hold a high position, would be the strongest in the Demon Suppression Division. Once he provoked those real strong men, he wouldn't be as lucky as before and could escape the pursuit again and again. Even his escapes before were not necessarily because he had never hurt or killed innocent people, which was why he didn't attract stronger people to chase him. Only the one in front of him kept staring at him, and fortunately her subordinates were not as fast as her. Otherwise, if everyone had a Yuanling gun, he wouldn't have to run away, and he would have surrendered obediently. Being suppressed for dozens or hundreds of years is better than dying. You said I just killed that family of scum to avenge, why do you have to stare at me? However, although he cursed angrily in his heart, his speed was not slow at all. In order to avoid, Ling Xiao, who was fleeing quickly, was like a deflated balloon, flying around without any rules, fearing that he would be hit by the Yuanling gun. Buzz. Swish. Accompanied by a humming sound, the Yuanling gun in Zhen Wuxuan's hand finally accumulated enough energy and instantly locked onto Ling Xiao, who was flying around in the distance. A brilliant blue light instantly shot out. In Zhen Wuxuan's hand, this Yuanling gun, which gathered technology, cultivation arrays, and prohibitions, was originally used to deal with powerful practitioners. How could he not take into account the flexibility and speed of practitioners? The various arrays and prohibitions in it have the function of locking and suppressing. The moment he was locked by the Yuanling gun, Ling Xiao's irregular flying stopped directly. Although it was only a moment, Ling Xiao had already broken free from the suppression. However, the energy attack triggered by the Yuanling gun was even faster. As soon as Ling Xiao broke free from the suppression, the azure energy beam was already approaching him. In a hurry, Ling Xiao only had time to mobilize the blood river and protect it all behind him. Boom! Accompanied by a violent explosion, the blood river that Ling Xiao had finally condensed collapsed in an instant. His body was like a broken sack, rolling and flying far away. Bang! Boom! There was another series of loud noises, and Ling Xiao's body directly hit the top of a mountain in the distance. For a moment, trees broke and rocks collapsed. Even that small hilltop collapsed by half, burying Ling Xiao directly in it. Looking at the hill in the distance, Zhen Wuxuan pursed his lips tightly, hesitating whether to go forward. There, it was already out of the border of Shenzhou. If it was really serious, Zhen Wuxuan's entry would be considered a cross-border case, and an application would be required. Otherwise, it would be considered an illegal invasion. If no one saw it, it would be fine. But Zhen Wuxuan's mind swept over and saw that on the other side of the hill, there was a line of people in uniform, trembling and looking at the collapsed hilltop. Although she didn't need to be afraid of the pedestrians with her strength, it was still not good to be seen by others. After hesitating for a long time, Zhen Wuxuan was ready to go and check. However, just when she raised her legs and prepared to move, a big hand was placed on her shoulder, stopping her movement. Zhen Wuxuan's heart skipped a beat, and her body immediately froze in place. With her cultivation in the realm of the domain, she was unaware that someone had touched her from behind. In fact, if the other party had not put his hand on her shoulder, she would have been unaware. If the other party wanted to kill her, it would only take a thought. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 213. As if he noticed something, the other party gently patted her shoulder and spoke softly. Read. What? Scared you? Who? It's Captain Zhang. He's scary and will scare people to death. Listening to the familiar voice coming from behind, Zhen Wuxuan took a long breath and said full of complaints. Ah! Ha 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 ha, just kidding, don't worry about this. Team Zhang laughed, waved his hands and said. Zhen Wuxuan, who turned around, looked at Captain Zhang's unconcerned look and couldn't help but feel speechless. Your joke is not a small joke at all. I almost thought it was Ling Xiao and his accomplices who were far superior to me in cultivation, trying to stop me. Zhen Wushuan said with complaint, then paused and looked at Captain Zhang and asked seriously. Captain Zhang, why did you stop me? Alas! Now is the time of great changes. The situation is extremely tense. If you are not careful, it may trigger a world-class war. If you directly enter the territory of other countries, aren't you going to be criticized? Captain Zhang sighed and slowly explained. What kind of reason is this? With my current level of cultivation, if I really want to avoid being discovered, how could those people discover it? What's more, do you think that with the current situation, you won't be criticized? Zhen Wushuan was speechless. You know, her attack directly destroyed the mountain on the opposite side. In comparison, sneaking into the borders of other countries seems to be nothing. Well, in short, it's better not to set foot on other countries' territories easily. Then, Captain Zhang said in a faint tone. Besides, you also know that kid's situation. Based on what that family has done, if they are caught by our demon suppression division, they will die 100 times. Although this boy's behavior violated the law, he was still eager for revenge and could be considered excusable. Moreover, he was in disguise, and after he was eliminated for us, this group of animals should be cut into pieces by 1,000 cuts. Since he has escaped from the country and was injured by your Yuan Ling spear, whether he lives or dies depends on his fate. Although what Ling Xiao did was excusable, no matter who got involved in his affairs, he probably wouldn't be able to deal with it calmly and call the police calmly. However, Ling Xiao did break the law, and it was an extremely serious crime of murder. Therefore, Captain Zhang handed over this case to Zhen Wushuan, who had just joined the job and was completely a newbie. In the end, it was Zhen Wushuan who arrested Ling Xiao and brought him to justice. Or did Ling Xiao finally escape? Then it depends on their respective fortunes. After staring at Captain Zhang for a long time, Zhen Wushuan finally withdrew her gaze. However, before Captain Zhang could completely relax, Zhen Wushuan on the opposite side had already spoken again. So, you have been letting me, an ignorant girl and a weakling, handle this case. Even when I repeatedly applied for support, I was always pushed back and refused. Zhen Wushuan's tone was gentle, but Captain Zhang's hair stood on end. This little ant is not someone to be trifled with. She might create a big mess for herself if she goes back. Therefore, after hearing Zhen Wushuan's unkind words, Captain Zhang couldn't help but explain with a smile. Oh, how could I push you away? It's really because the manpower is tight and we can't even out the manpower. And your strength is definitely the top elite personnel, how can you say that your strength is low? Alas, there is no way, who would let someone behind him be his old leader? Of course, the main thing is, what I did is indeed not very authentic. Isn't this treating people like monkeys? Ah, but, I am just training her, helping this girl, whom I have watched grow up, to have a special life experience. Well, yes, that's right, that's it. Alas. Turning her head to look at the collapsed mountain, thinking about Ling Xiao, Zhen Wushuan couldn't help but sigh, looking a little inexplicable. Since you are worried about him, why do you still use the Yuan Ling spear? Looking at Zhen Wushuan's expression, Captain Zhang asked. There's no way around it. I didn't even think about using it. I just wanted to hold him back until support arrived. However, who knew that after breaking through the realm, there would be such a big difference between the combat side and the non-combat side? I can only use the Yuan Ling gun. Zhen Wushuan said helplessly. It seems that sometimes being strong is not always a good thing. Captain Zhang nodded with a strange expression, as if he had added a new knowledge point. Team Zhang. Okay. Okay. What about him? It's okay, I'm not dead yet. Ah, no, that kid is dead after being shot by you. Gone. Gone. It's getting late, we should go back. After finishing speaking, Captain Zhang took the lead to turn around, his body directly rose into the air, and flew towards the distance. Looking at the collapsed mountaintop in the distance again, Xuanhuan shook her head and sighed secretly in her heart. She also took to the air and quickly caught up with Captain Zhang. After a long time, when there was no more movement, several people on the other side of the collapsed mountain began to slowly get up. Well, they had been lying on the ground before. After looking around and making sure that nothing happened, they finally breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the collapsed hill. Should we go up and see what happened there? It's a bit bad. If the mountain collapses again, it will be very dangerous. Hee, what's the danger? With our current physical fitness, as long as it's not directly below, a mere mountain collapse can't cause any fatal damage to us. And, aren't you curious about what caused the mountain to collapse? Maybe. There will be a secret world here, maybe. Well, it seems so. They looked at each other and could see the fear in each other's eyes, as well as a little excitement. If they could really find a secret world, then they would be really rich. Whether they reported it to the country or kept it secretly, they could get a lot of benefits. Let's go. Since they had already decided, they didn't hesitate too much and climbed directly to the top of the mountain. After they reached the top of the mountain, they were all shocked when they saw the entire collapsed mountaintop. If I hadn't smelled the gunpowder, I would have thought that this was a missile attack launched by the opposite Shenzhou. That shouldn't be the case. Under normal circumstances, the opposite Shenzhou still follows the rules.